Let's talk about what your watches say about you. Let's talk about what an all gold blue dial Audemars Piguet Royal Oak offshore brick says about what you feel like today.
Feel rich.
Yeah?
Because I have an apartment that smells of mahogany.
Okay. Fair. Let me see what it looks like. So I had the gold dial brick, and this is the new.
Well, the discontinued yellow dial.
Right.
Yellow, gold, blue dial.
Blue dial. But this is very, this is not subtle.
No, I think it's more.
And
it's more in your face than the
right.
rose.
So what is
especially if you're brown, like because I'm brown, like on the contrast of my skin, it's like much more.
Yeah.
In your face. Like,
versus like a rose that's.
Right, which I like the rose.
But it blends in with your skin.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't give it as much of the wow factor.
Yeah.
Like I've noticed that for Rolex too. Like for some reason, like when I wear a yellow gold watch, I get more of that like wow factor.
Right.
Then it just again skin complexion or whatever else. But I think the yellow on AP looks really good versus I still like the rose on Rolex.
Rolex is like Sky Dwellers. Yeah, that looks good. Today I actually chose this rose gold camo AP, and I'm a bigger dude, so I wear bigger watches like we both have on. And
well, I used to be fat, so I could rock 44s, but then I lost weight and I can't do 44s anymore. Yeah,
you're like wrist.
Yeah, my wrist was like fatter, and I was
chunky,
like, it was really annoying because I used to wear that camo, not this one, the regular one all the time.
Right.
And then I got like skinnier, and I was like, doesn't like kind of floats on me.
Looks like a baby's head on your.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if your chick gets really fat, and then your penis doesn't fit in there anymore.
So it's like throwing a hot dog down a hallway.
Yeah, exactly. It floats. Or driving a Cullinan, if you're a white guy.
You're driving a what?
A Rolls Royce Cullinan. I always say those things are so big, you feel like the new guy when the X was like a 14-incher, and then you're in there and you're like, it's not working. Yeah, it just doesn't work. Make sure you follow Exotic Car Hacks, that channel, for more car-related talk. But this is a watch channel, so we're going to keep it PG-13 here.
So going back to what your watch says about how you are and who you are, I think we just got a really good description and summary of why you're wearing an all-gold brick. Yes. Tells you that you want to talk about cocks. And
yes.
So we're both wearing AP today, and we're checking out some RMs right now that we can potentially buy, Richard Mille. But what's interesting is when I see people who have different types of watches on, I can usually tell something about what they enjoy or who they are. It's through observation, through understanding, through kind of judgment, if you will, in a fun game-like way. I can see what they're all about, and I don't know if people even pay attention sometimes when they're putting on a watch.
I think people buy stuff they like. They don't buy stuff thinking, what do other people think of me for wearing this?
I think they do if it's like Rolex. Because that's why people get like
but you think outside of status, someone actually is deep enough to think for the majority of the time that they have a thought about how others perceive them because they're wearing a Submariner versus Pepsi, like.
No.
Other than it's more money, it's more expensive or prettier
predominantly
looking.
in the mass market status.
That's what I mean. Like people wear watches like jewelry. Like why do women want a 5-carat ring? In most cases, like a 5-carat ring doesn't even fit their finger. Like most chicks that are hot have tiny fingers, right? Because they're not fat, right? Sure. And what I'm saying is they're not going to look good with a 7-carat canary, on a tiny ass finger. It looks weird.
What about let's just go with that status thing. Women want the Cartier bracelet.
Right, and they also want like Birkins, and they want like $50,000 bags, right? Like what's the difference between a $50,000 bag and a really nice Louis for $8,000? Like a really nice Louis. Yeah, all it says is like I can, and I have the money for it.
Right. So now
it's just the same thing for guys.
When you relate it to watches, we look at the guys out there in the world who are wearing them, and women too, who wear them, and they're doing it almost just solely for status. Meaning like how big can I go? How rich can I look?
Women, you see, I don't. Well, I agree, but I think woman doesn't say their status as much as their circumstance because. Again, there are boss ladies out there that are doing their shit, and even boss ladies aren't fucking buying themselves Pateks for the most part. You know, unless
Something
they're
like
celebrities, like whatever. It's not common. I'm not saying this isn't possible. I'm saying
Right.
it's not common. But I mean, usually if I see like an AP rose gold on a chick that doesn't look like she worked a day in her life, basically tells me how good of a dick she sucked.
Yeah, no,
I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. I know it's
Yeah.
fucked up, but it's like true.
no, but this still relates.
The better of a blowjob she's giving, the better that watch.
This is good though, right? Because like, think about what that says. So if you're seeing that, and again, we may be right or not right. Or not.
There's that chick out there that like,
She's
fuck
like,
that guy. I'm
oh
gonna go
yeah,
kick
I'm
his
calling you
ass."
up. It's like, yeah, I own this and 20,000 more watches. You're like, cool, you're 1 of 10. That could be accurate, but you can dissect all of that from that status setup. And same, so with men though, when they're wearing watches and they have that on, it still tells you something about what they're choosing. It's like, why are they choosing Rolex versus Patek versus AP versus Omega or Tag Heuer? And a lot of people will just choose, I think, something that's lower end because they think it's an expenditure, not an investment. Meaning they'll go with the base model Rolex or Tag
Well,
Heuer.
we've seen this in people too when they buy like base Rolexes because they want to wear them and they keep them 30 years, right? Like
Right.
we've seen this, like we've seen rich people.
with Submariners.
Right, we've seen even
Yeah,
that
Masters.
video that's like, what do the richest people in the world wear? You know, like Bezos' watch and this. I mean, they're just not watch people. I think they found
Sure.
something they like, and that's what it is. But also, I think one thing people aren't talking about is public image
Mhm.
in those settings is very different than what they do in their private life. Because there's this
100%.
other idiot that was like, oh, Zuckerberg drives a Camry or some shit. I was like, Zuckerberg like owns half of his block in homes just so no one else looks into his home.
Yeah.
And then has Paganis in like somebody's garage. What I'm saying is like, but you don't see him driving a Pagani down the street. What I'm
Yeah.
saying is like,
Well, it's perception of the public.
right. So it's like, but I think
Yeah.
that plays such a big role in some of these super high net worth celebrities that are
Right.
like just, I don't want to be perceived that way. I don't want to come across like I'm wearing a, you know, like $500,000 watch because
Right.
it's like saying something very, it's people are going to use that against me in a way. So like the way I look at that is, to me, I look at that as he gets more publicity from wearing a hoodie, you know,
Right.
a no watch or Apple Watch, whatever, than actually going out and wearing maybe a watch he has in his collection that's like $2 million and
Right.
he doesn't want anybody to know, you know?
Right. But
So I think
that's
that
also
plays-
like how I think people can start thinking about what your watch says about you. Because I don't know about you, you pick your own choice, but sometimes I'll cater to my audience.
Oh, I do
Meaning
that all
if
the
I'm
time, too.
hanging out with you or the watch guys, I'll wear something that's cool that people are like, wow, that's awesome. You have a Ulysse Nardin freak. You have a
It's something different. than
something that
yeah.
a watch guy would
Right.
appreciate versus if you need to show that you have some sort of status with people who don't know watches, you would wear the Sky Dweller or you know.
So I
something.
I almost use that strategy, except I use it purely understanding that the world only looks at it as status.
Right.
So I basically cater what I wear based on who is in the room from a dollar standpoint.
Yeah.
That is going to be like, hey, like this guy's invited to my table, no matter what, just on that basis alone. So it's almost like you show up in a room where everybody has a watch. 'Cause
Right.
everybody I hang out with in my world is wearing like 50, 60, 100K watches.
Right.
Like they have it. Doesn't mean they're wearing it every day.
Right.
So if they're doing that though, then I ask myself, I go sit there and I go, okay, I'm gonna enter a room where what is the likeliness that people are wearing 200, 300K watches? None, but everybody's a watch guy. I'll dominate that room with a 200, 300K watch.
Right.
Versus like sometimes I'll enter a room and I'll be like, I don't want any attention.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I'll wear just a really nice rose gold watch that shows status but doesn't really says like fuck you in that way. That's like
Right.
holy shit, like, you know, is that 300,000 or are we talking about like 50,000? You know, like, so I'll wear a 20,000 on a rose gold watch. Like, and then
Yeah.
people will be like, that's nice. No one will be like, oh, this guy like doesn't look nice, but it just doesn't like jump out at you like I have the only thing in the world that's like this expensive fucking thing. So I think that's I've used it because I know that people for the most part look at watches as simply status. Like I don't think they're smart enough to. I'm not saying again not all people, but I think guys use watches strictly to determine who's got the biggest cock in the room. I think that's been like
a lot of times.
yeah, and I think that's been the thing with cars. We do this in car shows all the time. Like if you see like in car like groups, like
Yeah,
you know
right.
you go to Supercar Saturday,
Right.
you hear the same people keep upping their game.
Right.
You go buy the latest. You know, you see, oh, that guy got a McLaren. Oh, that guy's got a Lamborghini. Oh, that guy's got the latest Porsche. And like they're just wanting up each other all the time.
Right. But so that still works in this world because if you have everything you're trying to one up people, that's great. But you also can go not reversion, but to something that's unique and beautiful for the money point. Meaning like, let's just say you can afford any car or any watch you want. you still have those collector
Right,
pieces
that's
where you're
unique.
like, oh, because it's so well done, it's
Yeah.
so interesting.
It's like the difference between an RM11 and a Dizzy hand. Like you could say
Right.
like an RM11 is more expensive, but a Dizzy hand is less likely to be seen anywhere. Meaning like you're already seen 40 different
Yeah.
RMs, all squares and rectangles and like all pretty whatever, but you don't usually see a Dizzy hand. So if you bring one to a show, people are like, oh, that's unique. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, or they appreciate that you
Right.
can appreciate something that's different.
But also, I think the difference comes from the resourcefulness when you don't have necessarily the ability or don't want to compete. Because some of the things that happen to is these guys are one up each other and they're going to financial hurdles to do it. You know,
Right.
it doesn't matter if you
Right.
lose 50
Right.
grand, 30 grand to be like, I have the nicest
Right.
car in the room or whatever.
Right.
But if you play that game, you always end up losing in the long term because there's always a richer guy. There's always a guy that's willing to lose more. I
Right.
think that's the way I put it. Doesn't even matter if they have more to lose or not.
Right.
They're just willing to lose more.
Yeah,
And so I say if that's what you're doing, then you're better off like just getting resourceful and saying, what do I want to wear that is not going to make me look like I'm competing? Like,
Right.
it's not going to make me look like I couldn't have had that. When I was poor, like one thing I used to do actually, this was a really good trick. I used it with the car. So I was trying to get into this peer groups. I mean, I didn't have that much money. I was worth like $1.5 million. It wasn't like something special. It was just fucking basic money. It's like over 10 years ago. But what I would do is, I used to drive like an Aston Martin.
Mhm.
And I used to drive like a really nice Vanquish.
right.
And people were like, oh, like, why'd you drive that? And I was like, oh, I love Astons. And I did. But it was the nicest Aston had to offer, but it was depreciated to 100,000.
Right.
Like, so people assumed that you were driving a $350,000 car, and you didn't have to lie about it. It's not like Baller Buster where you're like, hey, I'm rich. Like, look at me, I paid $300 for this.
Right.
But you also didn't have to, like, bring up what it cost.
Right.
And you
Well,
would,
and it's a beautiful car, and
right,
it's
and you would
appreciated.
still tie up to the same crowd
Right.
because you're driving the best of. You're not driving
Right.
the cheapest Aston Martin on the market. Like so.
Yeah,
Even though
that's-
you're driving the best of, it's still not at the cost of the best Lamborghini, which was $1 million.
Right.
And then this other car was like 100,000 depreciated, and versus the $1 million car depreciated was like 600, and it was
Yeah.
like. That's crazy. That's like that. There is a difference. That's why I always say it's very easy to tell who's got real money and who doesn't.
Right.
Because there's some things you can't fake.
Mhm.
There's some things like there's a level to the game that you just can't fake. Like once you get past the level where you're like, oh, my home is like 20,000 a month, even on a loan or a rent, or you go, oh, my watch is 300,000, or you go like my cars are like over $1 million. Like you can try to still pretend you're richer than you are. Like there's plenty of people on Instagram that do it.
Right.
But there is no way you can fake having money to that degree. Meaning like you have some level of money.
Yeah, right.
You're probably like pretending to have more than you have.
Yeah,
But I'm saying
100%.
you're still have that level of money to some extent where you just can't bullshit. Like you can't bullshit having your own plane.
Yeah, and it's,
You know what I mean? Like you can't be like, oh, I have my own like fucking insane, like $5 million plane, but yeah, I'm like just trying to pretend I'm like you have money. Maybe you're living above your means at every
Right.
level, but it's possible.
for the watch thing too. To reverting back to the Aston comment, the way I would look at that and compare it is the guys who have 10K to spend, 12K to spend on a watch, that go out and buy a GMT Master 2 Batman versus like a Ulysse Nardin
Rose gold. Yeah, exactly.
or like an AP Millenary 4101.
Exactly the same,
And you're
yeah.
like, oh, like you have the same amount of money, but look at how you try to
Right,
spend
yeah.
it versus investing it in something that you can make money
Yeah.
on, and you look like you're wearing a fucking $30,000
Well, I mean, I think
watch.
a UN Rose Gold is way better than a GMT
Yeah.
Batman. I think a GMT Batman fucking is garbage. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, all of the cheap stainless watches except the Pepsi Jubilee, to me,
Yeah, that one's nice.
everyone I've had, like everyone I've touched, I immediately sold because it was a complete shit.
Yeah, it's a Tinker toy.
Yeah, it's like complete shit. It's very loose, it's very cheap feeling, and it's very small. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot that can be said from how people think or position their money, right?
Yeah.
But again, that in itself is, it's just people's choices, I guess, on what's important to them. But can you, we should definitely talk in the next video on how do we spot fake ballers.
How to
Fake people.
identify them.
Yeah. So guys, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification button. Yes, touch his penis. That's what he's saying right there. And do that with your keyboard, not with your hands. And make sure you subscribe and like the video. And just give us comments on what you think the best bang for the buck watch is on the market right now under 30 grand. Let's see if you guys know your watches or not. We'll catch you on the next one.
See you next time.